What would you do if you discovered that following Jesus isn't about comfort, but about self-denial? How many of us wear the name Christian, but forget that Christ's words were clear? If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. In a world that exalts the ego, Jesus invites us to do the opposite, to let go, to surrender, to carry our own cross, not just once, but daily. Do we still remember this call, or have we forgotten that radical discipleship requires more than words and rituals? It requires an inner transformation that challenges us with every choice, with every step. When Jesus spoke the words that echo to this day, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me," he spoke in a context very different from ours. In the first century, under Roman rule, the cross was not a religious symbol or an ornament hung on walls or around necks. It was a brutal instrument of execution, reserved for the most despised criminals and rebels against the empire. Carrying a cross did not simply mean facing hardship. It was walking towards certain death, public humiliation, and complete rejection. The crowd listening to Jesus would have immediately understood the weight of these words. There was no romanticism in the idea of the cross. It was a symbol of shame, pain, and dishonor. For many, the image of someone carrying their own cross would immediately evoke the horrific scenes they witnessed when the condemned were forced to walk through the streets, carrying the beam on their shoulders to the place of execution, while the people insulted and spat upon them. Jesus, therefore, was not using a gentle or poetic metaphor. He was radically declaring that following him would require something absolute from his disciples, a willingness to die to themselves, to renounce their rights, their desires, and even their very lives if necessary. But Jesus' invitation was even deeper. It was not just a one-time heroic gesture, but a daily choice. The evangelist Luke records the crucial detail: take up your cross daily. This emphasis on constancy reveals that true discipleship is not a one-time decision, but a continuous, daily practice. In the context of Jewish culture at the time, there was a strong concept of obedience to the Torah and the rituals that marked the religious life of Israel. However, Jesus proposes something that transcends even traditional religiosity, a life completely surrendered to the kingdom of God, where the priority would no longer be reputation, social status, or personal convenience, but the will of the Father. The early Christians, inspired by this teaching, began to live counterculturally. It wasn't long before many of them had to literally carry their crosses, persecuted, excluded from their communities, rejected by their families, tortured, and even martyred. They became living witnesses to radical discipleship. For them, carrying the cross was not a figurative symbol. It was a concrete reality, lived at the cost of everything they had. Yet, this commandment didn't speak only of physical suffering or political persecution. At the heart of Jesus' words was the idea of denying the self, that part of the human soul that desires control, that seeks personal glory, that clings to material possessions, that refuses to forgive, that is vain and proud. Taking up the cross daily is saying no to the ego and yes to the kingdom. It is placing the love of God above any personal interest. In the gospel tradition, this total surrender is always accompanied by the promise of true life. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. The profound paradox of this instruction is that by dying to self, the disciple finds the freedom and true identity that only Christ can offer. Therefore, from its historical origins, the commandment, "Take up your cross daily," was understood as Jesus' most demanding and liberating call, an invitation that would cost everything, but would also bring everything, the transformation of a selfish heart into one shaped by grace, love, and truth. Today, this commandment resonates with urgency because, as first-century Christians witnessed with their lives, following Christ was never merely a superficial adherence to a religion, but a radical discipleship that demands total surrender. The saying, "Take up your cross daily," sounds almost like a riddle to many today. After all, what does it mean to carry a cross in a world that values freedom, self-esteem, personal success, and instant happiness? In an age of social media, consumer culture, and the constant search for external recognition and validation, Jesus' proposal seems at first glance almost senseless. But that's precisely where it becomes even more necessary. We live in a society where the I is king. The messages bombarding us every day say, "Be true to yourself, live your desires, put yourself first, flee all suffering." And yet, Jesus offers the opposite. Deny yourself. He doesn't deny our worth. On the contrary, he invites us to discover our true value, not by exalting the ego, but by emptying it in favor of a greater love. Taking up the cross today means giving up the desire to be right all the time, the pride that prevents us from asking for forgiveness, the vanity that fuels digital masks, the greed that enslaves us to consumerism, the anger that destroys relationships. Carrying the cross is choosing the hardest and least popular path, renouncing selfishness, serving when no one is looking, loving those who don't deserve it, forgiving those who have deeply hurt us, letting go of silent revenge and secretly held resentments. That's why this commandment of Christ has almost disappeared from the horizon of modern Christianity. It's too hard to be popular and demands radical courage. The courage not to follow the crowd, the courage to renounce the inflated self, the courage to live authentically in a world of appearances. Let's think, for example, about how we approach relationships today. We prefer to cancel rather than reconcile. We prefer to exclude rather than forgive. And yet, taking up the cross daily means remaining committed to others, even when the road becomes difficult, even when we are called to forgive 70 times 7. In the workplace, radical discipleship challenges the culture of climbing the career ladder at any cost. Taking up the cross means working with integrity, even if it costs promotions or prestige. It means refusing unethical shortcuts, even if everyone around you tells you it's normal. In family relationships, this calling is also challenging. Taking up the cross means sacrificing time and energy to listen, welcome, and care, even when we are tired or when the other person doesn't seem to reciprocate. It means placing love above personal convenience. And there is still a profound challenge on a spiritual level. Taking up the cross means abandoning the illusion of a God who serves our desires and recognizing that we are called to serve Him, even when this involves suffering, loss, or misunderstanding. This means renouncing a comfortable and superficial faith and embracing a robust spirituality that persists even when prayers seem unanswered, even when heaven seems silent. But there is a precious detail in this commandment of Christ. He doesn't say carry someone's cross or be a martyr once and for all, but take up your cross daily. This means that radical discipleship doesn't happen only in grand, heroic gestures, but in small daily acts of faithfulness. When we choose to love despite our flaws, when we choose honesty over easy gain, when we choose generosity even without applause, that is radical discipleship in action. Therefore, in this hyper-connected, anxious, and image-obsessed world, the commandment, "Take up your cross daily," reminds us that true freedom lies not in following our every impulse, but in submitting them to a greater purpose, living for God and others with love and dedication. When Jesus said, "Take up your cross daily and follow me," he knew he was issuing an invitation that many would reject. And indeed, throughout the centuries and even today, many choose to ignore this call, seeking instead a comfortable Christianity, adapted to their own preferences, uncommitted and superficial. But ignoring this commandment has profound consequences, not only spiritual, but existential. Without the daily practice of renouncing the ego, human beings become prisoners of themselves, slaves to their own desires, hostages to their emotional needs, constantly dissatisfied, always seeking something that never satisfies. The absence of radical discipleship creates an inner emptiness that not even success, wealth, relationships, or achievements can fill. On the other hand, when someone decides to live this commandment, even if it means swimming against the tide, they discover a greater meaning to life and an inner freedom that the world can never offer. Carrying the cross is not a depressing burden, but a path to liberation. Liberation from the tyranny of the ego, from the constant need for others' approval, from the slavery of appearances, from the anxiety for absolute control over life. Jesus' words continue to echo. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for my sake will save it. It's a disturbing paradox, but one that reveals a profound truth. A full life is found in total surrender, never in selfishness and self-preservation. This surrender need not, and usually will not, be heroic or grandiose in the eyes of others. It happens in the silence of small daily choices. When someone decides to care for a sick family member with patience and love. When someone refuses to return insult for insult. When a person chooses integrity in the face of the temptation of an easy advantage. When they offer time, resources, and attention to those who cannot reciprocate. Living this commandment also invites us to look within and ask, what crosses have I been avoiding carrying? What is it in me that resists self-denial, pride, vanity, fear? Am I truly following Jesus, or just using him as religious adornment? This is a painful but necessary question, because deep down no one is exempt from this call. The cross Jesus proposes is not optional for those who wish to be his authentic disciple. And every day we deny the opportunity to carry our cross, we also lose the chance to grow spiritually, to be healed of our deepest wounds, to live with real purpose. Therefore, this message is not just a theological reminder, it is a personal and non-transferable invitation. Are you willing to carry your cross today? Are you willing to let go of your ego, your need for recognition, your wounded pride, your empty vanity? Are you willing to live not for yourself but for the one who gave his life for you? The good news is that this call comes with a silent promise. Jesus never asks us to carry our cross alone. He himself walks with us. He himself has already walked this path. He knows the weight of the cross, and it is He who strengthens each sincere disciple to continue even on the most difficult days. And there is indeed a real reward, not the fleeting glory of human applause, but the deep and lasting joy of living in alignment with God's will, with a heart free and at peace. Living this way transforms the way we face adversity, crises, and even death itself. Everything takes on new meaning when we understand that carrying the cross is also walking the path to resurrection. And you, how have you lived this commandment of Christ? What other direct commandment of Jesus do you consider forgotten today? Leave your comment and let's reflect together.